very chuffed to be kicking off our presentations today. We do have 3 more in our series on PCI DSS version 4. And transitioning to PCI DSS version 4 is like embarking on a journey. There is lots of excitement as you set off. The journey is going to take a fair bit of time, and there's going to be lots to see and learn along the way. There might even be some unknowns that crop up that alter the path that we take. So how is everyone here feeling about this journey so far? If you feel good about it, let's have some applause. You feeling good? I'm very glad you're all feeling good. From the conversations we've had and the questions we're getting, we want to make sure that no one feels like this. This is not how we want you to feel. But if you are feeling a little bit like this, then that's okay too, because you're in the right place. This is where you need to be. Today we're going to walk through some of the steps you can take to help you with this journey and help put you on the path to a successful transition to version 4. Now, the first and possibly most important step is to not wait. Don't delay this effort. Don't put off the work that needs to be done. I'm sure you've all seen the timelines, the dates like March 2024 for the retirement of PCI DSS version 3.2.1 and March 2025 for the effective date of those new best practices that become requirements. Now, these might seem like far-off dates, but they will be here before we know it. And when it comes to timelines and planning work, there's actually this known thing about human nature that humans will use all the time available to complete the task more slowly, or they will procrastinate and complete the task right before the due date. And this little phenomenon is something that is referred to as Parkinson's law. An example of Parkinson's law in action is something like this. We have this big project to do. We start planning the work. It's early days, so we feel we have plenty of time to get everything done. So we focus on perhaps the less critical aspects, like coming up with a really cool project team name and who we're going to organise. But when we eventually start the work, we still think we have a lot of time. So we maybe make it a bit more complex than it needs to be, or take some side channels. Or we just put it off until later because we know we have a lot of time and we think we can start that next quarter. But what this means is usually at the beginning of an 18-month project, you have a lot of time. And then suddenly you realise it's 2 to 3 months away till the final quarter where it's due, and we're now trying to rush to get everything done all at once in that last area. Now, the good news is having this knowledge about how human nature works and how Parkinson's law works can really help us because we can plan for it and we can use it to our advantage. And there are some strategies and tactics that we can apply to help us with that. The first thing is to break down those big overarching goals into much smaller, more manageable tasks and make sure that we assign appropriate, shorter timelines to these tasks. We don't want to assign more time than is needed to complete a task because that extra time will be filled up with probably less important activity. And assigning smaller, more achievable milestones, be it a weekly milestone or a monthly milestone, rather than that larger, year-long milestone, for example, it means that even if the task is completed at the last minute, that last minute will be at the end of that week or that month or that quarter, and you will still have that forward momentum. There will be things being done all the way along the way. The other thing that's very important to do is to clearly define the results of each task, so you know when the task has been achieved and completed, and you know you can then move on to the next one. And this helps you also to prioritise which tasks need to be performed and completed first, and identify any dependencies, which tasks obviously may need to be completed before others can begin. Now, as you're working through the tasks, it's also useful to look for ways that you can complete tasks more efficiently, learn as you go. Ask yourself, if you had a little less time to complete the task, what would you prioritise, or how would you work differently to make sure it was done on time? And this can help you find where there might be some lag time in the project efforts. And also, don't get too caught up in one task that you forget to look forward to what the next task is and what needs to be completed in order to keep that momentum going forward. So we're starting on this journey, and as we're doing this, it's also very important that you stay strong or start strong as far as your security posture is concerned. And this means if you're already doing PCI DSS version 3.2.1, don't let those current security controls slip while you're working on your version 4 implementation. And if you're new to PCI DSS, perhaps your first assessment is coming up or you're not sure where to begin, you might want to consider starting with the defined approach. This provides a clearer path on how to meet the requirements, and then perhaps consider the customized approach, as a longer-term alternative once you're familiar with the defined approach first. And even if you're not new to PCI DSS, the defined approach may still be a good starting point while you're working through the transition. Now, whether you're using the defined approach or the customized approach, it's important to choose the right approach for you. And in order to do this, you really need to understand the requirements and what's new in version 4. There are a lot of changes in version 4, and there's a lot of changes to the requirements themselves. And it's not just new requirements. Most of the requirements have been updated in some way as well. Some have also been renumbered or moved around. They've been combined with others or separated to make a more logical flow of controls. And there are also some requirements that are currently best practices that have that future effective date. And one of your best resources here is that summary of changes document. I think you heard about that yesterday a few times. You'll hear about it again. It really is a useful resource, and it can really help you map your current controls to the controls in version 4 so that you can identify where you might have some gaps, and you can analyze the impact of the changes in version 4 on your environment and what you need to do. Now, to help you with this, version 4 includes a mountain of expanded guidance. There is a lot of information in the standard to help you understand the changes in the requirements, help you meet the requirements, and also in those intro sections to help you plan and manage the security implementation overall. So please do, don't miss out on that guidance, because that will really help you. And even if you're an SAQ, a self-assessment questionnaire organization, you're a merchant or a service provider that completes the SAQ, as well as understanding what's different in the SAQs themselves, I would still strongly recommend reading the standard. There is so much guidance in the standard, it's not all ported into the SAQs, but it still applies. The requirements in the self-assessment questionnaires are the same as the requirements in the standard. They've just been organised and collated for you. But all of the guidance in the standard for those requirements can still be useful to SAQ organisations. And if you are planning to do a self-assessment questionnaire, or even if you're doing a ROC, stick around, because this is where our next few presentations are really going to dive deep into those as well. Once you have this information, you've got familiar with the standard, it's then important to make a wise choice about which validation option is right for you, whether you would like to go down the path of customized approach or the defined approach. Now, whichever choice you make, it's important that it aligns with your organization's security strategy. If you're considering customized approach, then make sure you understand everything that it involves before you jump into it. There's a lot of extra work to be done there that hasn't been typically part of the defined approach. So it is a new approach. So we recommend doing some walkthroughs of the process, complete all of the documentation that is required for customized approach so that you're familiar with it, and do some of those early testing of your controls so that you can start to prepare for documenting the results of that testing. Then it comes to actually doing the work. And this is where, oh, I'm sorry, we're not doing the work yet. I forgot about this bit, compensating controls. As part of understanding which validation option is right for you, whether it's customized approach or defined approach, if you're using compensating controls currently and you're thinking, do I stick with this or do I go to customized approach? Have a look at the reasons why you're currently using a compensating control. Is it because you have a legitimate technical constraint or a business reason that prevents you from meeting the requirement as stated? Is there a legacy system, for example? Or are you using a compensating control now because you're meeting a requirement in a different way than is stated in the standard? Once you've had a look at that, you can then look at how the requirement itself has changed. The requirement that you're using the compensating control for, how has that changed with version 4? Most of the requirements have been updated to include more flexible language and to be less definitive about how a requirement is met. So review the requirement language to see how your implementation now fits in with that new wording. And then once you've done that, you can determine your approach going forward. If you were using a compensating control to meet the intent of a requirement a different way, then that's what the customised approach is intended to support. So this might be a good path for you going forward instead of that compensating control. And if that is, then that's where you can review the customised approach objective statement and review the supporting materials and guidance that's provided to see if that is the right path. If you were using compensating control because you had a legitimate technical or business constraint that prevented you from meeting the requirement, that may still be the case, and the compensating control option may still be the right option for you in that instance. And again, we do have updated guidance on compensating controls as well in the appendices in the standard. There's a little bit extra information there about how to use those the right way. Now we have to do the work. Once we've figured out our validation path, it's time to do the work. And it's really important to get everybody in your organisation involved in this. People from all departments and functions. Educate folks on what DSS means to their particular role and their function so they can see their place in contributing to the security implementation. And look for champions in your different areas to help you communicate that and put it in terms that the folks on the ground understand what it means to their daily working lives. It's also important to leverage the right skills for each aspect of this transition. Make sure that you have skills not only in security and the technologies that you're using, but also in the project management aspects of it. It's really important to stay on top of the project plans while you're working through all of these implementations towards version 4. Clearly define roles and responsibilities in your teams so that everybody knows who's doing what and by when, and document everything. There's a lot of documentation to be done from the project side, your milestones, your progress. There's also your own controls in your environment, your mappings to PCI DSS. There's also a lot of documentation updates in the standard itself. There is some new documentation required, such as the roles and responsibilities for different control areas. And if you are going to do customised implementation, there is more documentation as well. There are some templates in the back of the standard to help you with that too. And who can help you with this is the qualified professionals in the industry, and you can use also validated solutions to help you with this. We have trained professionals with our certifications at the Council. Our QSAs and ISAs have all access to version 4 training, and if you are looking for a QSA, you can find on the listing those who have completed the version 4 training. Similarly, if you have ISAs in your organisation, they can also complete the transition training and the exam and have their listing updated to reflect that they have been trained in version 4. We also have version 4 training available for the PCIPs. So if you have PCIPs in your organisation, they have access available to the version 4 module that explains the changes between 3.2.1 and 4. And you can also leverage validated solutions to help you with this, such as the software security framework and the point-to-point encryption solutions. So this is where you can actually look for resources to help with you as you plan your security implementations. And look for the skills within your organisation already, where if you're looking at implementing new technology or processes, make sure that you have your own people trained in these technologies well in advance, so that when it comes to implementing them and managing them, you're one step ahead of the game. Now, as you're working through your implementation, this is where gap assessments can really be your friend here. Gap assessments allow you to validate your controls before you are required to validate your controls. This early planning will really help you understand what you might need to work on before the assessment comes around. For example, one of the new requirements in PCI DSS is to do authenticated scans for your internal vulnerability scanning. And this is going to produce the results that you didn't get before. You are going to find new vulnerabilities that wouldn't have come up before. And it's going to take some time for you to work through how you're going to address all of those vulnerabilities that you didn't know you had. So don't leave that until the last minute to implement. Make sure that you have that plan in place so that you can address those in time. It's also really important to verify your scope continually through this process, both at the beginning of each implementation and at the completion. At the beginning, because you want to make sure you're applying these updates only to the systems and processes that are needed and to all of the systems and processes that need it. If you do have any opportunities or you're thinking about opportunities to reduce scope, this is the time to do it as well. You don't want to be deploying updates to technologies or processes and then find you are actually planning to descope them later on anyway. And then as you're implementing these controls and technology updates, Obviously, we need to make sure that at the end of the implementation, we have covered everything that was in scope, and that all the in-scope technologies, processes, facilities, locations have all been completed throughout that update process. Security as a continuous process is really key for this as well. For PCI DSS version 4 to be successful, this is really where the focus is. This is trying to help organisations avoid that ongoing cycle of last-minute remediation scrambling to get an assessment result and then having to do all that again 12 months later. And to avoid this, it's important to identify the right security controls for your organisation that actually align with your company's security strategy. The controls that you're implementing are much more likely to be maintained if they are clearly communicated and understood by those who are implementing them and working with them. And building security into your daily practices as a business as usual aspect of everyone's role will really help with this. And this continuous approach to security also means that if there are any failures, if there are any issues, they will much more quickly be detected and then obviously can be addressed as well. So as you're embarking on this journey, let's look at how that path might look. It might look something like this. It might look completely different. Everyone's journey is going to be different. The important thing, as I said, is to start now. Review the requirements and guidance, start planning your implementations and training your personnel, and start thinking about where you might need to make updates. Then comes doing the work. This is where you would map your controls that you already have in place to what's in the standard. Do some of those gap assessments to get a feeling for where you might need to do some extra work. Address the gaps that you identify as you go and keep performing those internal assessments to make sure that the gaps have been addressed. This is, again, a continuous process. Verify your implementations as you work through them and validate your controls at the end of each gap assessment. And remember to do that scope verification as well, so that we're not inadvertently leaving out an area of scope, or we're not applying new controls to an area that wouldn't need them. And don't leave those future dated requirements to the last minute. Even if you plan to implement other controls first, which makes a lot of sense, the controls you implement now need to support and be compatible with the controls you are planning to implement down the road for those future dated requirements. So it's important to keep that long view in mind while you're also working through those short-term milestones and keeping that momentum going. So to recap on these steps that we're recommending that hopefully will be helpful for you, first of all, don't delay. The time will go more quickly than we probably imagine. And this is where you really want to let your FOMO kick in, your fear of missing out, if you're familiar with that phrase. You don't want to be left behind with this implementation effort. Keep your security posture strong as you move forward towards the version 4 controls. Understand the PCI DSS version 4 requirements and read that guidance, and this will help you choose the validation option that is right for your organisation. Engage the expertise of your team, your internal resources. Follow good practices and document everything as you go. Leverage the use of qualified professionals and solutions that can help you with this. Train your people in new technologies if you are planning to use new technologies. And remember gap assessments, they're your friend here. This is that early validation of controls that lets you plan ahead and know what's going to come next. And always keep that focus on implementing security as an ongoing process, rather than a short-term fix in order to get through a validation cycle. Now, even though we describe this as a journey, the journey is not going to end with the transition to version 4. All of these steps will not only help you work to implement version 4, but it will also provide a solid foundation for your future security endeavours and any further implementations you may have down the line. And remember what I said at the beginning about this journey, it's going to take some time, there will be lots to see along the way. There's going to be lots for all of us to learn along the way as well. And the way for us to succeed with this journey is to really embrace it, to be all in. Let's make the most of this opportunity to evaluate what we have in our environments now and put ourselves on the path towards continuous security. And we can do this by leveraging the community around us, the people here in this room, the people who are watching remotely. The PCI community has a lot of options for collaboration and community and engagement, and we can really share our knowledge and experience here. And remember that we are all part of a larger community, And we are all going on this journey together, and we at the Council really hope that you will help keep us informed on how your journey is going. We want to hear from you as well. So thank you very much. I hope some of those tips have been useful.